There's a request for bill introductions. Do we have any bill introduction requests? Zach? State your name and your title, and then.
Yes. Good afternoon, Chairman of the committee. My name is Zach Denny. I'm the legislative liaison for the Department of Revenue, and I have 4 bills here to introduce real quickly. Sure what I did. Nope. Sorry about that. There it is. All right. First up, I have RS 2819. This would authorize the Division of Vehicles to downgrade a CDL holder due to a failed drug test. And this is a federal regulation, and we're just trying to remain compliant with it.
All right. Does anybody have any questions for Zach? Is there any objection to the introduction of the bill? If not, it's introduced. Next one.
We have RS 2820. This is military even exchange for commercial driver's license. This proposal would allow qualified military drivers to waive the CDL skills test and obtain a commercial driver's license. And this is a practice that the Division of Vehicles already does. We're simply trying to codify it.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I assume all these bills are introduced on behalf of the Department of Revenue?
That is correct.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Is there any objection to the introduction of the bill? If not, the bill's introduced.
Okay.
Next.
We have RS 2821. This would just simply amend the definitions of commercial motor vehicle in KSA 8-2-128. It would clarify leaving the scene of an accident and add gross vehicle weight to the definition, which just mirrors the federal definition of CMV.
Is there any questions for the center? Is there any objection to the introduction of the bill? If not, the bill's introduced.
Okay, last but not least, we have RS 2870, and this is a bill regarding mobile driver's license.
Are there any questions? Yes, go ahead, Representative Ballard.
Could you just explain that just a little bit more, please?
Sure. Yeah, this bill basically lays out the definitions involved in mobile driver's license and kind of lays out the issuance and procedure for creating and issuing a mobile driver's license. It's really a starting off point for the Division of Vehicles to work with stakeholders and get information and research any questions the committee may have down the road.
I'm fine. Thank you.
Any other questions? Is there any objection to the introduction of the bill? If not, the bill's introduced. Thank you very much.
Chairman.
Okay. Next item on the agenda is I'm going to open a hearing on House Bill 2523 that would allow farm permit holders beginning at age 14 to drive to and from religious activities held by any religious organization. We'll have an overview by Chris Wagner, our reviser.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Committee House Bill 2523 allows farm permit holders to drive to and from religious activities held by any religious organization beginning at age 14. KSA 8-296 provides the procedures for anyone older than 14 years of age but younger than 17 years of age to apply for a farm permit. Such person must reside on a farm in Kansas or be employed by a farm in Kansas to apply for such permit. A farm permit authorizes the holder to operate any Class C motor vehicle. Farm permit is who's someone at least 14 years of age, but less than 16. A farm permit holder who is at least 14 years of age, but less than 16, is permitted to drive a motor vehicle to and from any farm job or farm-related work, to and from school for the purpose of attendance, or whenever the farm permit holder is accompanied by an adult in the vehicle. And those are current allowances for a farm permit. What the bill would do is grant an additional permission to a farm permit holder who is between 14 and 16 to allow for the person to drive to and from any religious activity held by a religious organization from the hours of 6 a.m. to 9 p.m. And the bill would become effective on publication of the statute book. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Do you have any questions for Chris regarding this bill? Well, go ahead and ask the question.
Thank you. I need a clarification. Okay. The other bill that we passed, you had to be 15.
That's correct. For a restricted license, similar permissions, driving to work, driving to school, driving with an adult, those permissions begin at 15 for a restricted Class C or Class N license.
So now if for the farm bill, for an individual to drive, they can be 14? Or I thought that we were gonna take that to 15.
As it is in the bill, those permissions, driving to religious activities or any of those other permissions begin at 14. And some of those are current
So
permissions.
15, we'd have to do an amendment because the way the bill was drafted, it was 14. It's 15 on a restricted, but there's not an ability to drive to and from religious activities in the farm permit.
Just wanted to understand that because I was afraid it was a discrepancy. Thank you.
Go ahead, Representative Hoy.
But, sorry. Thank you, Mr. Chair. But right now, so this is permissions for, there are permissions for 14-year-olds with the farm permit. And then when they turn 15, then they could get a restricted license and then be able to drive to these. Would that exist under current law right now?
So yeah, under current law at 14, they could drive with a farm permit. At 14, you could drive to work, to school, or with an adult. At 15, if the person would want to get a restricted license and surrender their farm permit, they could do that as well. But the permissions for farm permits begin at 14, and they don't get any different restrictions until 16, kind of similar to restricted licenses. The restricted licenses start at 15, and then additional permissions are granted at 16, similar.
That's kind of complicated. We've got one set of rules for farm. We got another set of rules for restricted. A couple of years ago, we added the ability to go to church for the restricted,
Yes.
but we didn't think through the farm part.
So not complicated. So what we're doing here really, because we passed the one at 15 to go to religious services, activities, but we didn't do anything with 14. So we're saying the 14-year-olds need to have it too, so they can go to religious, but they stayed with how they had it. We didn't change anything for them. We just added that they can drive.
So it depends on what the person applies for. If they apply for a farm permit because they work on a farm or reside on a farm, some of their permissions can begin at 14 if they have that license. If a person possibly doesn't live on a farm or just waits until 15, they can get a restricted Class C license, which would allow those permissions beginning at 15. It all depends on what the person qualifies for, what license they qualify for, and what license they hold for when those permissions would kick in.
Either way, it means that at 14 they can drive to religious activities.
With a farm permit, correct?
Farm permit.
Yes. A restricted license would allow that at 15. That's what was passed a couple sessions ago.
In essence, why would they want to get a 15 one when they can do it at 14?
Because the farm permit is only allowed for people who work or reside on a farm. A restricted license is available to anyone, including people who have farm-related work.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm sorry to belabor this, but when I go to my agenda, I'm gonna have to be able to explain it. If I don't understand it, I'll be mumbling all over the place. I just wanted to make sure I understood what it really meant.
Yeah, they're two separate licenses, and just.
Any other questions? Representative Milton?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So is there any hours of training or just you're 14, you live on a farm and here's the keys, good luck?
Beginning at 14, no, there's no training required. Past those ages, yes, there's certain minimum hours that you need to complete to gain additional permissions as you become 15 and 16.
So if I have my farm permit at 14, there's no training, and then I want to get my permit at 15, I have requirements to meet as far as training hours.
Yes, with the restricted license, you have to have at least 25 hours before issuance of those.
What defines a farm?
I don't know if it's defined in this. I think it is. Yeah. Okay. So in subsection F on page 2 of the bill, on line 35, it says farm means any parcel of land larger than 20 acres that is used for agricultural operations.
Thank you.
Any other questions for the revisor?
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Representative Neely.
I have a question.
Sure.
Did I hear that there was a time constraint? Did you say 6 p.m. to 9 p.m.?
Go ahead, Chris.
At 6 a.m. to 9 p.m.
6 a.m. to 9 p.m.
Yes, yes.
Okay. All right. I just misunderstood that. Thank you.
Any other questions? Yes, Representative Milton.
Mr. Chair, as far as law enforcement, how did they enforce this? I have a friend that's a sheriff, and he said that his daughter got her permit. She works at a coffee shop. So she said, I'm going to get coffee before I go to school. And he said, no, you're not. And she says, well, I work there. He said, but you're not working, you're going to school. So, I mean, and so he and I have been talking about this. So what is the enforcement look like? They just ask, and if they believe you, okay.
I believe in that it would be the discretion of law enforcement to either cite them or dig into it further.
Any other questions? Representative Minix.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Now we have the expert up there. If I want to hire somebody in the summertime, people will come actually from the towns out to work on my farm. And I realize that a lot of their reasoning for that is that they might garner a farm permit when they turn 14 years of age. When they come to my farm, and I have lots and lots of jobs for them, some of the things we do is I know the restricted license, they have to have so many hours with someone in the other seat, and they actually have to have daylight hours and dark hours both before they turn 16. The farm permit, basically, they can drive to and from my house, but to qualify for that, when they're 13 years old, they come to work for me, and I have lots of jobs for them, and some of them is in that heavy ton pickup out in the pasture, driving around checking cattle or going to and from fields and stuff, and they can do those types of things with me. It's a way for some of those kids to actually get some time behind the steering wheel before they ever go out on your city streets and stuff. It's a little bit like a proving ground. If we if we didn't have farm permits, I'm afraid I'd have a hard time attracting a 13-year-old to come out to my farm and help during the summer season when we have lots of extra jobs and needs for that. Am I somewhat correct, Mr. Expert?
Can you restate your question, please?
I don't want to, but it honestly, those kids get an opportunity in a environment without any other vehicles around to learn how to operate things, and it can be from the lawnmower to the side by side to a big heavy truck. There really isn't that many restrictions on farm kids, and you'll find a few kids out there occasionally with a 14-year-old license can take a pretty good sized load of grain to the elevator, but they've been driving for a few years, potentially not on any of the public roads. Of course, we wouldn't do that, but maybe out in pastures and other environments that are far safer for them, in my opinion.
Any questions for the revisor? Representative Goddard.
I really hesitate to open this can of worms, but it probably impinges on the separation of church and state. If a 14-year-old is on his way to a seance, is that considered a religious service? Or if it's a devil worship service, are they considered on their way to a religious service?
Go ahead, or Chris.
I'm sorry. There is a definition for religious organization in the driver's license statute. I don't want to misspeak. So I want to check the definition of that before I answer. That's okay.
But it would have to be a recognized.
A religious activity could be construed broadly, I would say, but I want to check the definition of religious organization before.
Like I said, I didn't want to open that can of worms. Thank you very much.
Any other questions? Representative Ballard.
It's not so much a question, but I'm trying to think when we were teaching our son to drive, we were out in a parking lot area, no cars were around or anything else. That to me would be equivalent to your farm out in the open and there's nobody disturbing anybody. But the law said that an adult had to be with him when he was doing this. So the time that we were teaching him, either my husband or I were in the car with him all the time. You're saying that on the farm, they don't need anybody to be with them because it's wide open. Well, the parking lot was wide open. There weren't any other cars there, and I did it at a time when nobody was there. So they're learning, but how are they learning? I mean, who's supervising them?
Mr. Chairman, if I could respond.
I think at this time we're actually asking questions of the reviser. Some of this, if we work the bill, can be discussed at that time. Is, biggest thing we want to do right here is have a hearing. So can you address?
I withdraw my question. I'll bring it up later. Thank you.
All right. Any other questions for the reviser? All right. Seeing none, we'll move on to the fiscal note. There is a fiscal note in your file, but there wasn't any fiscal note on it. And the first proponent that we have on this bill is Representative Adam Smith. Welcome to the committee, Chairman Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members of the committee, if I'm a little tired, please give me a little bit of a grace. My roommate was up all night watching TV last night, so that's the chairman, by the way. This is one of those bills that's real easy to get wrapped around the axle on a little bit. Excuse my pun, but when I first thought of this bill, a couple of years ago, we had the bill that changed Section 101 for the restricted license. Section 96 kind of mirrored it. Up until that time, it mirrored the same privileges back and forth to school, back and forth to work. We added this piece into Section 101. My county treasurer, who also shares my last name, and that's not a coincidence, it's my wife, handles all the driver's license transactions in Wallace County, called me and said, hey, did you guys intend to, or was it an oversight, or did you mean to just put that in the restricted? And I contacted Chairman Prail at the time, and he said, yeah, that was an oversight. At that point, it was already in conference committee, so we couldn't make that amendment. In all rights, I should have done this last year. But I'm not really here to debate the merits of whether kids should be able to drive back and forth to school or to work or to religious activities. I'm just saying whatever we need to do, we need to be consistent, because it's really confusing from the beginning driver's standpoint. When can I do what? I mean, we saw how confused we are even in the committee right here on who can do what and when. Imagine how hard that is for the kids that are trying to learn all the rules and regulations with this newfound freedom of driving and the privilege that goes with that. But my wife is scheduled to testify right after me. She'll be on WebEx, and she can answer a lot of the questions. I can answer from my own standpoint. When I was 14 years old, it was just a few years ago, but I still had to take the driver's exam. I still had to pass the driver's test I had the state trooper in the car with me, and we were driving around Sharon Springs. I still had to pass all that. The training was up to me. I got the booklet and learned. And to your point, Representative Minix, my dad took me out in the pasture and we drove around, and we had all the training that way. But my main intent of the bill here is just to make sure that we're consistent with both the restricted and the farm permit, because up until a couple of years ago, they did mirror each other what driving privileges were allowed. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I'd be happy to stand for questions.
Have any, Representative Collins?
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. I mean, something along these lines did come up when we did the original bill, but what if, say, my neighbor in Mulberry decided to go to a religious activity in Weston? Is there any mileage limit, or would they have to drive, or would they be able to drive across the state?
Under this statute, they would be allowed as long as it was something that was sponsored, I mean, like a church camp or something like that. But it would have to be within the hours of restricted 6 a.m. to 9 p.m.
Okay.
Same as it's what's in section 101 right now.
Okay, yeah, I just thought of that because I know it before something along those lines were mentioned, but thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Other questions for the conferee? All right, seeing none. Thank you, Chairman Smith, for coming by, and we'll let you get on to your next meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, next on the agenda on WebEx, we have Christine Smith, Wallace County Treasurer. Welcome to the committee, Christine.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members of the committee, my name is Christine Smith, and I don't know if you're seeing me or not. I have issues with my computer. My name is Christine Smith. I'm the Wallace County Treasurer. I also serve as a driver's license examiner under the Department of Revenue's guidance. As an examiner, I renew commercial and non-commercial driver's licenses in my office, and I issue learner's permits, farm permits, and restricted licenses, but only to teen drivers who've completed the approved driver's education programs in the state of Kansas. You should each have a copy of my written testimony, and Chairman Smith did give an overview of the history. Why this bill is in front of you is just to become consistent with what's already in place for restricted licenses. As an examiner in our county, we have a lot of confusion from parents and teens, just as you, the committee members, did on what's allowed, what's not, what hours, how many hours of driving time do they have to have before dark, after dark. There's a lot of that on the shoulders of parents and teens trying to follow our driving laws. One of those most recently was, where can my teen drive to? Well, as Mr. Wagner read, if you have a farm permit in the state of Kansas, those teens can drive to and from farm-related work or farm errands, running for parts, driving to and from farm work, going to and from school only for the purpose of attendance. They can't drive back in for play practice after school or things like that. And they do all of that alone. Of course, there are families and kids that have more driving experience than others, but this is a learning opportunity for them. If they have a restricted license, of course, to and from their jobs, that can be farm related, but it doesn't have to be. They can drive to and from school, again, for the purpose of attendance, and they can do all this alone, and additionally now drive to and from religious activities. We do have a family in our community that has twins, twin boy, girl. One of them opted to get a farm job. They live in town. The son decided he wanted to get a job working for a farmer, was able to get that farm permit at age 14. The sister, on the other hand, was not working for a farmer. She was then only eligible for a learner's permit, which meant for 1 year from the date of issuance, she had to drive with mom or dad or a licensed grandparent, another adult in the car, for up to a year. And then she was eligible for that restricted license. But if you take those two situations, the brother at age 15 was not technically eligible to drive to youth group or church activities, but the sister at age 15 was, with less on her own driving time. So there's just an example of how inconsistent the law is and how we need to change that if we can, just to more accommodate our young drivers. The inconsistency between the licenses just caused them to have their different privileges. So that's what we want to look at today, is just how can we modify that if possible, if this were to pass favorably, to give those kiddos the same driving privileges as their peers. I do believe that's all I have, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate your time, and I'd stand for questions when appropriate.
Does anybody have any questions for the Wallace County Treasurer? You know, she does work with this on a day in, day out basis, so she might be a great resource to answer some of the questions that you might have. All right, seeing none. Mrs. Smith, you did a great job, and I just want to apologize to your husband for all of the TV you watch when he can't go to sleep.
Thank you, sir. Have a great day.
All right. We do also have written testimony only from John Donnelly with Kansas Farm Bureau. If you'll take a moment to look at that. Do we have any other proponents for this bill? Do we have any opponents for the bill? Seeing none, do we have any neutral on the bill? Seeing none, I'll go ahead and close the hearing on House Bill 2523. Jill, do you think you could try to bring some copies of this comparison you did for me, for the other members of the committee? Maybe we'll just have a couple of them out there for the public. Good. Yeah, get it to Megan and then we'll get it out. There's a comparison. It's still pretty confusing that that Jill did for me as I was trying to understand some of the differences. But it might make it a little clearer for some of us if we decide to get this bill. Committee tomorrow, we are, let me see if I can find what we're doing tomorrow. We're going to have a hearing on, going to have a presentation on automated license plate readers. And then we're going to be hearing another license plate bill tomorrow, 2500. On Monday, just so you can get ready, I plan to do a final action on some of the bills that we previously heard. House Bill 2481, House Bill 2575, House Bill 2498, House Bill 2507, and House Bill 2500. The agenda for next week is already on the website, so if you're interested in those, I think we have them are very controversial. On Tuesday, we'll have a hearing on HB 2482, which is the first entry division distinguished license plate, and House Bill 2558, which is an armed services occupation metal distinguished license plate. And also, we intend to take final action on House Bill 2499, which is the bill on the distracted driving for people under 18 and in a school zone or a work zone with so anyway, yes, Meg. Delta Waterfowl, that's the license plate bill tomorrow. So there's nothing further.